So what I want us to do is to start becoming more conscious, start choosing things in a better way for ourselves, and start creating a life that's going to gear us to really take advantage of the opportunities that are going to show up for us in the years to come.
This podcast is brought to you by The Integrated Human. We work up, down, inside out to plug yourself into your potential. If you want to see what we are up to and what's next, sign up to our newsletter or follow us on social media. If you like what we are doing, we really appreciate it if you can like or post on social media and YouTube and help us grow.
All right, we're back. The Big and Small Podcast. I'm Jason Shields, and I'm the big one.
And I'm Marit Gabrielsen, and I'm the tiny one.
Today we have something so special. I've been waiting a long time for you all to meet. One of my exceptional friends, one of my exceptional healers, Houdinis, magicians, village witch, doctor,
Wonder Woman,
as
I know her as,
Angela Economakis. Welcome.
Oh, wow. What an intro, Jason.
He's good at that, isn't he?
Oh,
He's very good at intros.
That's just, thank you. I'm really, really blessed to be invited by you guys. Thank you.
oh man, it's so good. We spent some time together in Cyprus.
We did.
Yes, and I got to visit you basically in this center of power that you have created, this amazing place where young people and old people come to find their hearts, to find their souls. You know, there's some places that it's easy for me to meditate deep. And I sat down with you and your crew, and it was just like 1,000 pounds of gold just landed in my lap. I was so deep in meditation, I didn't even want to move. You know, so I just want to say thank you for that experience. And also, COVID's kept me from coming back.
I know.
But I'm coming back. I'm coming back.
Oh, we have talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
So
I'm waiting for you guys.
This is I have to say, this is our first long distance podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're the first one.
So congratulations, Marit.
I love it. I popped your cherry.
Good job.
Yeah, that's it.
Now,
That's it.
Now this is the first one, so I'm highly excited about this one. And we'll be Jason know you. I have no clue who you are.
I know, but I have heard about you.
Yeah, because I have heard
him
about
talking
you as well. And Jason talked about you since we started the Big and Small Podcast. We need to get her on. And, you know, this is tech stuff, and I'm not that good at tech stuff. And then, okay, well, now's the time for it. So I'm really excited about this podcast today. What I know is that you are a wonderful woman. You are highly educated within medicine. Something happened. You said, excuse the language, fuck that shit. You now live in Cyprus, and you help young people see their potential and help them, and you use cacao, and I love cacao. So
we're gonna have to get you some then.
Oh yes, please.
Definitely.
I'm a cacao addict.
Yeah.
You're my person. You have
Thank
to
you.
come to
Yes,
Cyprus.
I'm ready. Jason, can we go?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we
I'm
can make
waiting for you
it.
guys.
Sorry for the accountant, but if we make some episodes down there, isn't that a business trip?
It is. Actually, yes.
So what happened? Who are you?
Who am I? Wow. Well, firstly, Jason, thank you for describing your experience when you were with us here. You know, it was such a very special time, and it, you know, for your listeners to understand, this was pre-pandemic. And during our time with you and Steve, you know, I remember we were in this really creative buzz of possibility and potential. That was riding on the back of having met in just this, you know, incredible environment at one of Dr. Joe's retreats, week-long retreats. And you know, we'd been planning all this possibility for a women's training camp on the island. Do you remember? You know, and there was all of this excitement and co-creative energy. And, you know, what was it? About 6 months later?
Yeah.
Boom.
Because you went in September, October.
Yeah.
And pandemic was in March.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know that are listening, that Angela's a big deal. Okay. She's a big deal, and she has contacts everywhere. And she had hooked me up with some of the really amazing people who do jujitsu in Cyprus. And basically through her contacts, we had arranged to do a women's empowerment and jujitsu seminar, or I should say retreat, where the only men would be there would be the presidential guard. The presidential guard was going to show up and participate. Yeah, that's it. It was such a powerful experience being down there and getting that kind of support, and everybody was on it. Yeah, because of Angela, and that's something that it was so cool. I mean, talk about being able to affect people from basically the people who stand next to the president all the way down to people who work in a restaurant cleaning tables. You know, that's what she has. And when we'd gotten to the point where we were about to figure out where we were going to have it and all that, had made the contacts, had warmed them up, and they were loving me and I was loving them. Pandemic. So, damn it, pandemic.
I still have it. Just so that said, we are still having something.
Yes, yeah, we will.
You don't know about this yet.
Surprise!
We'll be
I'm
there
pretty sure this has been what I've been like playing and manifesting with in my head and visioning.
Yeah. We're moving in.
You know, one of the things I just kind of almost I want to add a little bit to that in a way is that, you know, I think part of the joy I've always experienced in my life is connecting people together. Because I always know that there's power in numbers. There's power when the high vibrations and the excitement and the joy and the love to do good, to create good, to create the possibility for people to experience what they may have perceived as being an impossibility.
Yeah.
That could become possible. That's like my language of love. That's my excitement. I mean, I live for that. So, you know, a lot of the people that you ended up meeting, I didn't necessarily know directly, but I knew who might know them, and I could sort of, you know, and that to me is just, it's so powerful. It's so exciting to then see other people like yourself who are this wealth of experience and mastery and wisdom and fun and, you know, creative with a lot of energy, to then be able to connect with the pieces needed and the other individuals who can facilitate then those bigger visions to happen. And I don't think I've ever maybe expressed it in that way, but it is my language of love. That's what excites me, and that's what expands me, you know? So, you know, to go back to, you know, Marit's like, so who are you?
Yeah.
I almost don't know where to pick that up from, but who am I?
Except of Wonder Woman, which goddess, you know.
Yeah.
Crazy woman, moody woman. You know, there's an analogous, you know, polarity, and I just want to make sure that, you know, as we talk through, you know, this period, you know, I want to be extremely transparent all the time about the truth of what it's like to be me. Just like it is to be you. And I listened to a lot of the podcasts over the last week because I was like, all right, now I've got a really great reason to like put time aside and to sit and listen. And I really enjoyed a lot of the sharing, and especially you, Marit, when you were sharing about the sort of inward experience that you'd been going through.
Thank you.
Dealing with, you know, the depression periods or the inward cycles of your inner work. And, you know, and Jason, you made you articulated something that was almost a moment of absolute healing for me, to hear it articulated in that way. When you were talking about, I actually wrote it down, so I wasn't going to forget it. The power principle. When you sort of mentioned that, anytime you sort of want your personal power, to come up, to expand, we will experience our polarity.
Yes, that's right.
We will experience our polarity. And part of the work I do, which I'll explain a little bit for you, is I've realized if I really distill, especially kind of the one-to-one work I do or the group work that I'm doing with people, that's more on, I guess, a introspective and a therapeutic component to it. It's actually looking at all the areas where we traditionally, I guess, have shame around our shadow.
Yes.
I hate the word shame. I just have to say that. We talked about that this weekend. The word shame.
It's triggering.
It is what it is. It's shame.
Yeah.
And you should have shame as the concept, but we feel shame in stuff that shouldn't feel shame. You shouldn't feel shame in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you articulated that, and I forget which podcast it was in for your listeners to go find, because it was gold. It was absolute gold.
Well, my answer is to listen to all of them.
Well, yeah.
Over again.
Obviously. I think it was one that's entitled something along the lines of suffering, pain, and something else.
Yeah, I would imagine it's that one.
Excellent.
Yeah.
See, she's smart. She's
Suffering, pain, and Portia.
Yeah,
I think that's the one. Yeah,
that's the one. That's the one. I think what it enables people to do then is to really understand that there is actually a purpose to our polarity.
Yes, that's correct. Right. Yeah.
So we're not damaged, broken, lesser than, failing at, unworthy of being, unworthy of being, not just unworthy of being in that state when that comes.
Exactly.
And that within that, and this is what I guess my work in the last 10 years especially has shown me, within that is the alchemist's work, because that stuff that people are often terrified of owning, seeing, they will outwardly and aggressively deny it. They'll mask up in overcompensating ways, or, questing after external whatever to satisfy themselves, rather than turn towards what's hurting or what they're afraid of.
Yep.
I'm the person that will walk into your personal hell with you.
Yeah, that's it.
And because my life has been actually around facing my own personal hell. And then through a lot of what I feel is, grace in a way in my life, the right circumstances and the right people showed up at the right moments to then allow me to see what that was, how to heal, how to disentangle that.
Yes.
And how to put it in a greater context beyond the micro Petri dish of my own life. And when you then realize that that can become your gold, then when you're confronted with another person in front of you who is sitting in their own shame, in their own self-hatred, or their own, negative self-perception,
yes,
you have no judgment.
Exactly.
That is absolutely correct. I think that's the most wonderful thing with having actually a process, which I can feel myself.
Sure.
It's you just the acceptance when you meet someone that has that. It's just I feel them, and I understand. I feel with them, And I don't judge them at all anymore, which I would have done like 5 years ago. I would be like, ugh.
Right.
But how can I? And I just see no reason to do it, because I've opened that part of myself, and I can see that in them. So I really understand the suffering they have right now. And I think it's so important to have people like you that they can be that with, so they don't have to hide it or shame it or put it in a box and ignore it.
Yeah. That's what I felt when I was there with you meditating, you know. We talked about on one of the podcasts that unconditional love has to do with acceptance, you know, and acceptance. And if you want energy, you have to handle the positive and negative pole. And everybody's like, oh yeah, because, you know, electricity moves, and yeah, it's not just there, it's everywhere. Polarity is what we are. And people are like, oh, I'm so exhausted, I'm so worn out, I'm so burnt out. Well, are you just trying to live on the positive pole all the time? Or are you accepting the negative pole? Are you enveloping and accepting this cycle of life so that you can squeeze the juice out of it? And that's what I thought and felt and experienced when I was with you. It was just juicy. It was so good to be there, and it was so safe. And the people that had gathered around you that I got to experience were so lovely, and lovely not from that point of view that they're only positive, but they're so real, they're so balanced, they're so in themselves at the same time as they are out of balance and changing, because in order to change and grow, you have to be out of balance.
Absolutely.
You know? So it's that marriage of polarity, and what a wonderful thing it was to watch.
It was wonderful to have you witness that as well, and for people to meet you guys. You know, people remember you. You know, I mentioned to some people that, you know, I was going to be doing this podcast with you, and they're like, "Oh, when are they coming back?" You know,
hopefully soon.
2024.
Oh, okay. We have a date.
We have a year. Well, we coming before. We're bringing people in 2024.
Fantastic.
Yes.
All right, we're on. I'm just saying yes to it.
Deal.
I have it on tape now, so
yeah,
you know,
it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Binding.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Contract.
Absolutely.
It's contract.
Yep.
Absolutely. So in a way, I'd say that you know, it's a core aspect of, you know, what I do. And the thing about what I do and, you know, who I am in this individual body, this separate entity, they're very intertwined.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware of that. And I've understood that for my lifetime, that's actually how it's going to be. And I've come over the last years, as, you know, in my 30s, you know, you have a lot of different pulls on you. You've got your biology pulling on you. Do you want to do family? Do you want to, you know, have your own life with your own experience of, you know, family and children and this, that, and the other, or, you know, and looking at how things have just very organically evolved, and not resisting what is, and not resisting what has presented itself all the time, has given me my answers. And actually, that's when I'm at my most harmonious. And so what you experienced when you came here is my heart. It's my joy. You know, it's my beating heart. These people who come here that I feel extremely privileged to be a part of them as community. They are tremendous human beings. And, you know, I have my safe space in them as well. You know, in a number of them that are quite a way down the way of their own spiritual journey, of their own self-awareness, of their own, you know, I literally have, you know, recently told a friend of mine, you know, you and your family are like my safe space when I need it. And that's tremendous for me to find that as well, you know, because part of the difficulty doing this work when you've decided to anchor down in one place like I did in 2014. Yeah. And I mean, that was a big deal for someone like me who was this freedom seeking, constantly moving entity. I mean, travel is my life. I love new places, new experiences.
Highly educated, very powerful, filled with ideas and love and need for expression and healing people as she moves through the world. There was absolutely, positively no place you couldn't go, and you chose Cyprus.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Or I would almost say that in a way it chose me.
Right.
Because when that happened, it was back in 2014. I was getting ready to buy land in Guatemala, where I'd been living for 2.5 years, with my mentor out there, Keith Wilson. And I was very happy living out there. It was in nature a lot more. It felt a lot more intuitive. I had vibrational family, if we want to call it that, people, soul family that I felt very connected to. And then I had this very powerful vision that really, it happened very suddenly. And I saw in this vision, like this army of what looked like young people. And I didn't really know any of them except for 2 that were right at the front. And one of them just stepped forward and said, "Angie, I found more of us. It's time for you to come home." And I felt my heart explode and implode at the same time. It was a very visceral experience. And I was in tears, and I was just like, oh my God. And it literally felt like home had uprooted suddenly from the Lake Atitlan, where I was living, and suddenly went and landed back in Cyprus. And I ran to Keith's house. I thought, I have to tell him. And, I didn't even get to open my mouth. He said, "Sit down." And I sat, and he closed his eyes, and he started to get very emotional. And he said, "It's time for you to go home. You've had a visitation from the children that are coming." And I just thought, oh my God, how did he see that? And what are these children? I was like, I never had the intention for whatever ended up actually formulating. I had an intention for what would give me a lot of joy to do, but I never really saw how that would form. I never said, I'm going to sit, find a house, start groups, do this, do that. It came.
It often does.
Yeah, it does.
It often, I think it always does.
Yeah, right?
We just think, we think this thing up here. I'm pointing at my head if you're looking at YouTube.
Yeah.
You think it's so important.
I think the noodle's deciding, but...
The noodle's deciding, the noodle doesn't decide.
No.
And for all you noodle people, I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
I think it's so true. It took me a long time to surrender to that because, as Jason has been very generous in saying, I've got a really very strong intellectual mind. And that mind on the one side is brilliant for, merging with my heart's guidance and allows me to then weigh up things and, make decisions and processes that need to put my heart into action.
Yes.
But I also understood that the evolution of that intellect had actually arisen as a trauma response when I was younger.
Interesting.
So it's both a gift, but it's also at the same time, and I've had to become aware of when it's the trauma response arising, which is it tends to be my need to control an unknown that feels very emotionally threatening. And when it's complementing what my heart's guidance is tuning into.
Wow. That was a beautiful distinction.
Okay, we are now in minute 24 of this podcast.
And she already dropped the bump.
Stop, press stop and go back 2 minutes and listen again. I've never heard it explained that good.
Yeah.
Today's not so very good, but not as good.
I just got parked. Nice.
Park the podcast.
I love it. Keep parking.
Go back 2 minutes. Listen again. And if you don't understand it, write it down and come back in a month and in a half year or 10 years. When you understand that,
then you're good.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get it.
Yeah. And
It took me a long time to get it. And then it took my ego enough time to then decide, in your words, to park it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And to allow myself then in those, it's actually to then invite the next level of my own growth, because you know that moment when you get it, you see yourself and what you're doing, and you get it, the penny drops, and you can't unsee it, right? It's that moment where you can't unsee what you've just seen about yourself.
Yep.
Not in a nasty, judgmental way, but you're like, oh, I'm at a crossroads. I'm being given a choice point.
Yeah.
What do I want to do? And I'm not sure that any of us can pick that moment. I think that layer by layer, we release our density, what I call our density, our wounded experiences, our nervous system that's been holding a lot of the, pain or the fear or the anxiety or the programs, right? And my understanding, my sense of it is that when we release that, we make more space. We allow higher frequencies to have the chance to take that space. And within that, what I've observed over the years, working with thousands of people, literally, I tried to calculate, and I just, it could only be an estimation. I mean, and I'm a pattern recognition person. What I would then notice was that somebody's true self began to emerge on its own. But it was usually when enough internal trust had been built within them to trust their own unfolding, their own process. When enough of the shame, the perceptual error that somebody should feel shame had been dissolved, which then makes space for self-worth, self-esteem to just start to kind of anchor in. And then suddenly there's this moment where you allow that realization to come, because you're not about to defend yourself against it because it threatens your identity. And I would see people blossom. I mean, I experienced myself blossom in that way, but it's so much easier. We always see everyone else before ourselves. It's so much easier to look outwards, right? Yes. And so I would see them suddenly emerge and enjoy their life and allow themselves to risk dreaming, to follow their passions.
Yep.
To allow themselves to feel the vulnerability of a connection with somebody that they'd always maybe wanted to have, or to allow a relationship into their lives, or forgive parents or people who hurt them or whatever. And you can't plan that for someone.
No. And that's...
If you try...
Yeah,
you're gonna fight cats and dogs.
It's very difficult.
So much resistance, and
totally.
like I said, then you shouldn't, because you're stealing from them. That process of opening up, like we talked actually about it the other day. Like I don't like to say onion, because I feel that but the issue with the onion is that the layers are so thick. But if you have like the cabbage, that's thin layers. I like the cabbage more because it's so thin. It's not about ripping off a thick layer like an onion. It's like cabbage. And they almost see through some of them. You are peeling up a cabbage to get to the core of the cabbage.
I love that.
Yes, and there was this conversation I had with one of my psychologist friends, and he's like, yeah, you really have to get the client to trust you. And I said, no, Trond, it's about them trusting themselves.
Yes.
That's where it is. It's their process. It's their internal movements. And when you can provide a space where they can work enough internally so that they have contact with themselves. And he looked at me like, what? What? And I'm like, that's it. Because the truly revolutionary, the quantum changes in a person happen when they are ready for that change, not when we are trying to make that change happen for them. And
all you can do is provide a safe space an opportunity
Absolutely.
and make them at least have the room so they can be accepted and seen without no judgment. And if they take that or not, unfortunately, we can't force some people.
No,
I wish I could. It would be much easier. Just like,
but that's the thing, you know, we talk a lot about the mind and the heart and the body and the spirit, and we do sometimes talk about energy. And we have a wide range of listeners who appreciate these different levels of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Angela, you are a quantum field. You walk through and you see that energy working on people. It's kind of like being God's sacrificial flame. People go there and they deliver what they have to sacrifice. And sometimes it's the good, sometimes it's the bad, and sometimes it's the ugly. Sometimes they project on you. Sometimes they put you on a pedestal. Sometimes they want to bury you. Sometimes they run away. But all of those things are their internal process. And having that understanding, having come there, means that you absolutely, positively have gone beyond the hang up of having to be the one that does, having to be the one that takes honor, so like you said, you park that ego, you know, and it's so healing to be in that presence. And it was obvious. It was obvious when I was there with you.
I mean, thank you for mirroring that back. You know, I got to have the mirror of that through my own mentor, through Keith in Guatemala, who, you know, provided me with the space to decompress my life.
That's it.
And, you know, I'd met many teachers before that. And, you know, you describe this idea of walking as a quantum field. I hadn't understood what was happening to other people when they would get very close to me. And it would often be this initial excitement, and they wanted me as a student, and they were really super excited. And then I was then doing my part, which was then sort of, you know, translating and expanding, you know, their work or their teachings and bringing other people, because I get excited if I find something that works for me. Oh my God, I want to climb the mountain and like scream it from the top, going, guys, this works, you know.
Come here, come here.
It's amazing. And then their stuff would often suddenly erupt, and I wouldn't understand why. And I mean, in some really weird ways, you know, like, I mean, accusations that just left me completely confused.
Yeah.
And so I'd learned not to trust really these people that they were saying that they're spiritual teachers. I was like, okay, I'm done with that. Like, I'm not doing that again. I don't know what's going to happen next. And when I met Keith, and I wasn't in a great place in my own life. That's why I went on that trip, you know, through Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico. I scanned him, which is one of the witchy ways that I work.
Witchy dropping power.
Witchy dropping power. We all have these abilities, whether we're aware of them is another matter. But, you know, one of the things I did as a child, I could read people's sort of energy. And instead of everything just starting to close down, my heart and my solar plexus opened. And I hadn't experienced that for years. And he said to me, he goes, "You're coming back to train with me." And I just looked at him and I went, "Yep." And actually yesterday was my 10-year anniversary to moving to Guatemala.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. 3rd of May. Facebook is useful for a few things.
Yeah.
One of them. You know, and I surrendered into that space.
Yeah.
And I learned what it was like to have a teacher, have a space holder who never judged me for a millisecond. He was so self-aware in his own, you know, in his own self. And he was, you know, he's a master in his own right. He's a wizard. He's a wizard. But he was untriggerable, you know, in that way, because he understood what his role for our generation, you know, because he's in his 70s now, and, you know, I'm 41 now, and I was 31 when I landed on his porch. You know, he understood a lot of what I was carrying and why I was carrying it, and the bigger reason behind why I was carrying it, and so my generation and the themes that we were dealing with. So I never felt so much acceptance and understanding and patience and love as I did there, which then enabled my deepest, darkest, most terrifying parts of me to erupt, sometimes really like I wouldn't see it coming. And then suddenly, boom, projection, crazy, terror. I mean, talk about judgment. I think I was the most judgmental person in existence.
I can relate.
Because I'd felt so hurt in certain areas in my life. And as in that victim consciousness, and I don't say that carrying a judgment around it, in that archetype.
Yeah.
When you feel powerless, you don't have any skills or understanding at the time when you experience and internalize that pain or that hurt or that bad behavior from the people outside of you or who are meant to take care of you.
Exactly.
You know, I became super judgmental. And then on top of that, because I grew up in an environment that I could read everything that was unsaid, disowned, subliminal, non-tangible, whilst the adults were definitely not wanting to own that stuff because that would just collapse their reality. And I mean, that's not to be unfair on my parents. They're amazing humans and were very loving and supportive. That just is, I think, fairly normal in a lot of people's homes with individuals who might have some level of sensitivity that is intuitive, that is empathic, you know. And so I then ended up gaslighting myself because I couldn't trust my own reading. Because the adults were going, no, it's not. And I'm like, oh, but yes, it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's it.
Oh,
and
that's difficult.
And like you're saying that, you know, anytime one is a victim or has been hurt in that situation, you've been separated. You feel separation from the field. You feel separation from the surroundings. And then your ego has to protect itself. And the only way it can do is by making more separation or at least justifying the separation, which is judgment. The justification of separation is judgment. But so you being super intelligent, super connected, and super, I don't know, both psychic and aware of what's going on, man, that your parents didn't end up being violent to you.
No.
Exactly. That's actually quite special, because what happens is that when you are in that place of powerlessness. Sorry about that. Powerlessness. You don't even like to say powerlessness. Yeah. And feeling like a victim, feeling separated. Very often you can see where the conflict is. What's the natural tendency of a child? To push the button.
Oh, red button.
Push the button. And to not then be the recipient of violence is actually a very holy thing. I mean, your parents are good people, because living with somebody who's super intelligent and super sensitive and pushes buttons, man.
You know, I'm so glad you're bringing that up, because I think it's a really important thing for your listeners to they may find something really important that they're going to relate to, and it might validate something, an experience for them. I was very fortunate that I wasn't on the receiving end of physical violence or sexual abuse. I think in part my not being on the receiving end of the physical violence side, because I mean, I am from a very fiery Greek family, right, which didn't see a problem with, you know, smacking kids or whatever in those times.
Yeah.
I learned to read to such a degree the environment, and I had such a terror of anger and rage in that would, you know, it would erupt in my environment. I learned to read even the facial muscles that would give me the indicator that we were maybe 30 seconds off from that going potentially to violence.
Yeah.
And so I learned to contract my energy down.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a Catholic convent school from the age of 7 to 11 with Irish nuns.
Wow. Irish nuns.
Oh, wow.
Irish.
That's a whole other level.
Okay,
right
that's
there.
another podcast.
Yeah, that's what we're going to have to do that. We're going to
Yes.
have part 2 and 3 on this one because I have to hear
Sure,
all about
we can
that.
do that.
Like here was like he would have like 5 things to just go.
What?
Is Irish nuns Catholic?
Irish nuns.
Huh?
And there is nothing more terrifying than an Irish nun who is frustrated, sexually frustrated, angry at her limitations, and decides she's got a vulnerable population of young kids.
Yep.
I
that
should
she
laugh
can
about it.
beat
I'm so
up.
sorry.
Yeah,
I can just
exactly.
picture it. Oh
I
my
mean, I
God.
remember a friend of mine literally just peeing on herself from terror
Oh,
in the
wow.
seat next to
my
me,
God.
right? So I had this amazing opportunity, if I look back on it in that way, to really learn how to read my environment and adapt my energy.
Now, just so it's said, my friends, you know you have some personal evolution on when you look back to some of the most traumatic things in your life and look at it as an opportunity for growth. And you're like, thank you so much for being so terrifying that I actually had to learn survival skills. God bless you. Yeah. That's amazing.
Hallelujah.
You're awesome. You're awesome.
I'm telling you, it took me a couple of decades to really, unpack that one. But
What? You couldn't see that straight away?
Oh, God.
What?
oh no, I don't even mean back then. Like I would think
Yeah.
of them and just feel rage,
Oh, wow.
Of course, of
if
course.
not wrath that you would do that for children. I wanted to execute karma. I mean,
Oh,
on the
yeah.
back of some of those experiences.
Absolutely.
But what and this is really thanks to Keith. Like he really kept repeating this idea that, there is reason, there's gold in every experience that we've had.
Yes.
And if I look at my life now and I look at this entity, which is my work, let's call it, that gives me the most love and fulfillment I could ever imagine my body being able to hold. I mean, I'm extremely visceral in how I move through the world. Everything is feeling. It's because of those experiences that I'm able to do what I do.
That's it. That's it. That's so beautiful.
And I'm glad, I'm grateful I survived those experiences intact, because I got very close to wanting to end my life on a few occasions down the line. So I can relate to people getting to that place because they don't know how to get out of it. They don't know how to move through and make sense of what they're feeling, or feel like they have a safe space to deal with it and unpack it and everything. And I also recognize the tantrum that a part of us has with life, with source, with wherever it is we think we have come from.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, going to that edge, in Guatemala, and I was literally experiencing these intense waves of suicidal pain every 12 minutes. I literally timed it. I'm like, I can't believe this is coming again. And I wanted it to end. And something called me to go to Keith's porch. He was holding ceremony, and I walked in there and I looked like death, and I was in my pain, and and he sat there and he just watched me. And, my victim self was kind of going, well, where's all the love and the comfort?
Yeah. Fucking do something, dude. I'm hurting.
Yeah, like heal me, or,
Do something.
do something. And he just sort of sat and watched me for a while and continued working with everyone else. And then at a certain point, I remember there was this lull in the ceremony. There was about 40 people on that porch. And he turned around to me and he goes, Angela, something along these lines. I'm going to paraphrase, obviously. He goes, Angela, you can play with that tantrum that you want to leave this life, but just know that you'll be right back here in another parallel reality doing it all over again, because that's what your soul wanted to learn.
That's it.
Oh, that's
You
a
can't
smack in the
escape.
face.
Dude, I both hated him in that moment. I wanted to throw things at him at that moment. I wanted to scream at the universe. I wanted to have my tantrum. My insides felt totally betrayed, you know. And yet it remains as this moment of, you're going to log this and you're going to come back to this.
That's it.
And it actually, it seeded and began to grow, because I couldn't manipulate him in that moment to give me the thing that my victim ego was craving to feed from.
That's it.
You know, and he was the master in that moment. And you know, anyway, I mean, looking back and being able to see those, you know, those painful experiences that we have in life, you know, to be able to give it meaning in your service work, or, you know, to find the meaning, the reason in it. Every time I work with someone else or a group, I heal a piece of me each time, I realize.
That's it, because you are them.
Yeah.
We are one. That's it. Through that healing, from that healing that you made in yourself,
Totally.
you're sharing and creating more healing by healing others, or being in that process. That's exactly how I see my life as well.
Right.
That's very powerful. That's very powerful. I was wondering, this is something that I heard, and I would love for you to describe a little bit for Marit and for the people who are listening, because, you know, we talked about the polarities and about growth and evolution. You started as a child, and you said, like, your intellectual sharpness came almost as a reaction to trauma, right?
Yeah.
And your sensory acuity and understanding situation, your situational awareness came very much from that, and understanding that very often the bad things lead to ability to find good things and to help others. But could you talk about the transition between you working with cancer patients and then transforming yourself into a person who's stepping out into the jungle in Guatemala and making shaman stuff? It's like
you go from the intellectual of the intellectual to the most woo-woo shit out there.
Yeah, and that's it. And,
I love woo-woo shit. And I have nothing against woo-woo shit, but it's woo-woo. Yeah, it's really woo-woo.
Yeah, and we also, we're woo-woo too, but don't tell anybody. Of course we're woo-woo. Yeah.
It's a podcast, but still.
Yeah.
Sure.
You didn't hear that. You didn't hear that.
Tens of thousands of people listening, but okay, you didn't hear that. Yeah.
Sure.
No woo-woo.
Yeah. Thanks. No, let me explain a little bit, for sure, because I think one of my many roles is a translational role between, you know, science, medicine, academia, if you want, and, you know, the kind of spiritual metaphysics, mysticism part of things. And I found myself, obviously, as a child, very empathic, very sensitive. Whether it was just my environmental situation growing up in the 80s that, you know, I was watching children starving to death in Ethiopia on the BBC, and I could feel the pain in my body. I remember that feeling of like, no, I have to do something. You know, like a child does. It has this pure innocence, this pure intention.
Yeah.
Or I could feel the trees that were being deforested in the Amazon at the time, and they were showing it, and I was hurting, you know. And the ancestral part, where I was born into a family with a lot of loss before I was born. A few people had died in the family, you know, before their time, if you want to call it that. And so there was a lot of grieving still in my family that I was very sensitized to. And by nature, I mean, I see the photographs, I hear from, you know, the people who are around me. I was a very happy child. I was very joyful. I was cheeky. I was fun. I wanted to share that joy. And so I had these two polar parts of me operating. And what do you do, I guess, in sort of, in the 80s and 90s when you feel this calling to want to help people? You find some kind of profession that is analogous to that. And I was pretty bright. So it was going to be something like being a doctor, being a nurse, being something like that, right? It was going to be one of those kinds of professions. And I just walked around with a stethoscope and I'm giving everyone injections as a 5-year-old. So it was pretty clear that, I think I was heading towards being a doctor.
Yeah. 5-year-old
so,
already healing the world.
I'm so happy she added 5-year-old. I love it. Because she said, I just went around stabbing people. I'm like, as 5-year-old, I'm like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah, with the little plastic injection kit.
Absolutely.
And I loved that whole idea. I was transfixed on the TV every time there was a surgery or anything like that. And so, the pieces added together. And so I went to like a really high-powered academic school that was really high pressure, a whole other story there. But it was the right environment to get into medical school. To cultivate your mind in that way. And the thing I want to mention, since you mentioned the thing about polarity, is that at the same time, I was also very fortunate that my parents weren't freaked out by spiritual or energy stuff, because as a child, I was laying hands.
Wow, there you go.
And lots of children have this ability to do that. They're drawn, they see auras, they see things, they feel things. And so when my mom would have a migraine, I went, mommy, and I go put my hands on that, and her migraine would go away.
Yeah, exactly.
And it sort of escalated into some like really, fractured coccyx, and coccyx healed, no evidence of it, like didn't get in the way of that thought. So at the same time as, there were two parallel streams running. You then get into the academic world, you get into the medical field, and, if it's not evidence-based, it doesn't exist.
That's right.
Right? So a lot of that kind of shut down, or the attention went elsewhere, but it reopened with full force when I started my clinical work, and I didn't realize it. And I got really sick. I actually got really sick within 2.5 years. I'd have these things that I would remember, like I would walk around the oncology ward that I was a junior on. And, I'd sit on the patient's bed and hold their hand and ask them how they were doing. And then by the time I would get up to leave, they would always say to me, Doc, whenever you come around, the pain just goes away. But then I'd get up and I was with crippling lower back pain.
Yeah, exactly. Transference.
I didn't know what I was doing. Exactly. I didn't know that I was doing it. And it was very unintentional.
And a shaman would say, you need a body protector, girl. Right.
But it's a happening.
A whole lot of that stuff then came soon after.
Absolutely.
So I crashed and burned within 3 years. I literally burnt out. I burnt out. I was not in good shape.
That's not strange. Yeah.
Oh.
It's not strange, but I burnt out before the rest of my year began to. I mean, it took them some time to get to those kinds of places. And then it added more shame, right? It added more shame because I thought, well, I failed. This was the thing I wanted to do so badly.
Yeah.
Long story short, I gravitated to Cyprus. I was engaged at the time, and we were trying to figure out where to live. And I ended up in Cyprus. I ended the engagement because there was a whole life transformation point at that point at 28. And I was going to build healthcare services here for palliative care, which was what my master's was in.
Yeah.
So I did a bachelor's in healthcare management and economics. I did my medical degree, and then I did a master's in palliative care and policy.
Wow.
And all of that by 29. So I was that academic part was like fully working,
Your bookcase was filled with books you had read.
Totally.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That left part of my brain was like super on.
Yep.
And then I came to Cyprus, and my spiritual path exploded open without warning. Within a week of me arriving.
Oh, that's intense.
Literally, that has to be a whole podcast.
Yeah, I think we have like 4 podcasts in the books here. We are getting close to the end.
Yes,
I know.
I propose a thing. How about we start once a month having conversations with a witch.
Ooh.
Well, we at least have to finish up all our stories right now.
Yeah, right.
So it's but let's
down.
we're gonna do something here, because this is definitely not the last one.
No.
But
There's just too much to explain to you guys from the questions you're asking, and I'm sort of trying to distill
well,
what
I
is
started
relevant.
this small question: who are you?
Yeah.
Who am I? I'm all of these. I'm a sum total of all of these experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
it's perfect.
And so much more.
But we can have time for a little bit more. So you said you exploded in Greece.
Yeah. You were in
so
Cyprus.
that
In
opened
Cyprus,
up.
yeah.
That opened up. And so I was involved in a healthcare project here, whilst at the same time opening meditation and healing circles in my mom's basement.
So cool.
I had 2 Facebook accounts.
Yeah.
One which was me and one which was an alias me, which had all the spiritual stuff. Like, I was in such polarity, it was insane.
Wow.
And then in 2011, that exploded. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do that. I felt too pulled into 2 areas. And I crashed my own life. Literally, I pulled out of everything, and I talked to the universe, and I said, you need to show me how to put all this together again. And the trip to Guatemala showed up within 2 days. I literally spoke to the universe. I said, I can't do this anymore. I need guidance. Wow. Show me.
Yeah.
I surrender, because my mind in planning my own life isn't working out.
Yeah.
I think
I keep trying to control it.
one. Many can relate to that.
Yeah. That's absolutely true.
And that was my moment of real surrender. Literally, I don't know how to do this. Show me.
Yeah.
And I set my intention. I found this trip. It was a group tribal travel, 20 days around Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico with intention. And I wrote my intention. And, if you read it, it's everything that then happened.
Wow.
And I wanted to find my own healing for myself. And then I wanted to connect to my life purpose.
Yeah.
Finally to land in it.
Yes.
And that was basically what happened. So that's basically what I do. And we at some point we'll talk about cacao, and we'll talk about anything else you want, and Dr. Joe and
Irish nuns.
Irish nuns.
Oh,
Irish nuns.
Nuns on fire. Come on.
Dude.
Yeah, but seriously, cacao, I really want to go into your shaman experience.
I would
I want to hear more about your worldview. I want to hear everything. You are an exceptional human being, and I'm very blessed to know you. And I'm so proud for you to be with us on the podcast, and for me to be able to introduce you a little bit to Marit. It's
amazing.
Incredible.
I just only heard about you for the last 3 years, so I'm like, I understand she's amazing. Yeah, but who is she?
Yeah, and also not only that, but Marit's one of those people. She said, "You said it, but prove it." Like, prove it.
Right.
So did we prove it? Yeah, we proved it. Yeah.
You need to come over and come play. Come play here.
Yeah, no, we, again, you don't know about it. Maybe Jason can, because he sometimes read my mind. But no, we're going down there next year. And then we are planning an event there for Integrated Human in 2024. For a week of meditation and inner work.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you find that interesting, say 2024.
Yeah.
Fall.
Fantastic.
It is interesting.
Fall or spring 2024. My plan is to have a week down there for people to grow.
Beautiful. Well, we will help you make that happen.
But then we need to have a business trip down there first.
Hell yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Well, thank you so much for the time today, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me. I know it was a round the world, round the universe pit stop here, there, and everywhere.
It was perfect.
It's a lot. I only realized how much I've lived and experienced when somebody asks me about it. I'm like, oh shit.
Wow.
It's an adventure. It's an adventure. So thank you for having me.
Oh, you're wonderful. All right, my friends. Remember, you matter. And unless you multiply yourself by the speed of light squared. Then you're energy. But if you can't be energy, matter.